Talofa lava, this is Pacific Waves from RNZ Pacific. I'm Susana Suisuki. Coming up, Vanuatu's referendum to keep a lid on political instability gets underway. Also,
attention just shifted from Inga to the vote of no confidence.
The focus in PNG is directed towards the Prime Minister's future, despite the fatal landslide. And
at the end of the day, we are ocean people. The ocean is the sole breadbasket for all of us.
Pacific leaders talk prosperity in the Caribbean. Voting is underway for Vanuatu's first national referendum on constitutional amendments aimed at curbing political instability in the country. In the referendum, voters are being asked to vote yes or no to the addition of 2 articles to the country's constitution. Koroi Hawkins has more.
Article 17A says any MP who resigns or is terminated for ceasing to support a political party will have their seat automatically vacated. And Article 17B says all MPs must be affiliated to a political party and there can be no party with only a single MP in Parliament. The articles have already been passed by Parliament and the referendum result will dictate whether they come into effect or are rescinded. In-country polling opened at 7:30 on Wednesday morning and closed at 4:30 p.m. local time. The chair of the Electoral Commission, Edward Kaltamat, says there are over 200,000 registered voters and that those overseas have until Sunday to cast their ballots. All the votes, in-country and overseas votes, will be counted together next week. I spoke with Mr. Kaltamat, who was on the road visiting polling stations shortly after voting opened on Wednesday.
Voting opens today in Vanuatu of only one day, 29th of May, is for to go and vote in the respective polling stations. For overseas polling, the polling starts today and ends on the 2nd of June because most of our Vanuatu citizens overseas are working in the farms and some students studying in Fiji. It's not their public holiday, so we allow them to give them 5 days for them to vote.
How many registered voters are there? And is it just based on the voters list from the last election?
No, unfortunately, now we have more, I would say, a little more accurate for the list now. I can confidently say that now we are less than 300,000 registered voters because now we only using national ID card to vote as the identification. National ID card are only issued to people who are alive. In the past, we have our register, our voter list is where we have police list, but it's how to identify. But now, because with the national ID card.
And does that include overseas voters, or is that in just in country?
Also include
overseas voters. And just for our listeners, what is the referendum question? What are people voting on or about?
Changes to Article 17 of the Vanuatu Constitution, whether they support the new insertion in the Article 17 of the Constitution. There are 2 insertions. One is 17A and 17B. 17A is the vacation of seats for member of parliament representing a political party, whilst 17B is for independent candidates and single member of parliament.
So 17A, if an MP leaves their party or defects, they automatically, their seat is vacated. And 17B, if someone is elected as an independent or is the single MP of a party or a customary member, they have to join a party. Is
That's
that
right. They have to. For the 17B, you have to affiliate with a political party that is already in the parliament. 17A is for members of parliament who represent the political party currently in the parliament.
How soon? Obviously, you have 5 days of counting for overseas votes. How soon do you anticipate counting of referendum votes to start?
That means the Electoral Commission will start the counting after 2nd of June. While waiting for the overseas ballot boxes to arrive, we will start counting the ballot process in Vanuatu. We're expecting a result on the 10th of June. That is, if all the ballot boxes arrive on time.
Understandable. And once the result is in, whether it's yes or no for each of the articles, what happens next?
Well, the Parliament already passed the bills. They already approved the bills. The President already assent on the bills. So now it depends on the people now. So after the referendum, if more citizens agree or vote yes, then the two articles immediately.
And if they vote no, are they just automatically also rescinded?
Right.
Thank you, Thomas, for time, Blue.
Okay, thank you.
Political survival is dominating the focus of Papua New Guinea's government, despite a landslide in Inga province that, according to PNG's disaster management team, is expected to have killed more than 2,000 people. In the weekend, 18 members of parliament shifted their allegiance to the opposition, including a few ministers. Our correspondent in PNG, Scott Waide, says although he's unsure of exact numbers, there is a threat to the government. He told Caleb Fotheringham all the attention is now on the looming vote of no confidence against Prime Minister James Marape.
James Marape and the current government, have also gone on social media. They've posted pictures showing that they still have the numbers and that the Prime Minister is confident that he will remain in power. He has indicated very strongly that he doesn't intend to step aside, and that if there is any challenge to be made, it has to be on the floor of Parliament. Now, the number of people brought over to the opposition has determined the alternate Prime Minister. So Rainbow Paita has been chosen or has been nominated as the alternate Prime Minister for the vote of no confidence that is expected to happen. And that has meant that yesterday there would have been a vote of no confidence, but because of the change in the alternate Prime Minister candidate, the opposition had to file another motion naming Rainbow Paita as the alternate Prime Minister candidate for the opposition. So that is where we're at right now.
Has there been any indication of when this vote of no confidence will take place?
Possibly. I don't think it'll happen this week. I mean, much of the week has been spent already. It may be in the next sitting of Parliament. I'm yet to find out when.
In terms of this political situation, how has this affected what's going on in Inga? Are people talking about Inga, the politicians, or is the focus just what is happening now in Port Moresby, really?
Yeah, that was one of my concerns over the weekend, because in a space of just 24 hours, the attention shifted from 400 plus people dead in Inga to horse trading in Waigani. So the attention, both on social media and in the discussions that are happening in public and on the floor of Parliament, all of that attention just shifted from Inga to the vote of no confidence. I was speaking to a few government ministers, just asking them if how this was going to impact on the service delivery and how this was going to impact on the relief work that was happening in Inga. So one of them said that instructions had been given to the Defence Minister to coordinate the relief work via the Defence Force and police and the National Disaster Operations, because the National Disaster Operations come under the Defence Force. But he said, I am concerned that the attention has shifted, but we're hopeful that things will work out positively and that work will be done to help the people in Inga.
Are people on the ground thinking this is pretty bad taste?
I can't really say. I haven't been able to assess how people are feeling right now yet. But generally, you can expect some kind of sentiment like that with attention shifted. People in Port Moresby not really affected by the situation in Inga, but people in the province would be quite concerned that attention has shifted from them to Waigani politics.
Yeah, do you think this could affect the politicians' long-term survival? You know, obviously they're fighting for it at the moment, but it seems like maybe it's a bit short-focused.
Yeah, that's the nature of PNG politics. Everybody will look at the short-term survival to stay in power at least, and then go back to do other work. So, yeah, that's the unfortunate situation that we have to deal with.
Has there been any discussion of putting this on pause while the Inga situation gets dealt with?
Highly unlikely. Highly unlikely. There's nobody's talking about Inga right now. It's just all political survival.
New Zealand's former Minister for Pacific Peoples has weighed in on the future of Pasifika in Aotearoa following the release of the latest census data and pre-budget announcement. The latest 2023 census data by Stats NZ shows a fast-growing youthful Pacific population that makes up 9% of New Zealand with a median age of 25. It comes just as people prepare to find out how the coalition government has sliced the pie. Alicia Foon spoke with community leader and former politician Alberto William Seal about why he believes Pasifika and Māori are the future and why they should be prioritised in the upcoming budget.
Oh, look, I think I've always known for a very long time that we're a growing, fast population, the young population, and that paints a picture that Pasifika, as well as Māori, is the future of Aotearoa New Zealand.
When it comes to the breakdown of our Pacific population, May 14th marked Good Day in New Zealand and across Fiji, and there's a growing population of Indo-Fijians or Fijian Indian people who say they don't consider themselves to be Asian or classed as Asian as they currently are on a census, and that they would usually tick other Fijian Indian or consider themselves to be Pacific Islander. Many of the people that I spoke to said they want the New Zealand government to officially recognise this, and they want to be included in parts, MPP scholarships and resourcing. Do you see Fijian Indians as Pacific Islanders?
I understand that they carry Fijian passports, but when we're talking about Indigenous people, there is a difference. And I think one of the matters concerning that is really about the resourcing that you identified. If they're receiving resources as ethnic Asian population and then wanting resources from the Pacific, which is a small purse, people really need to review all of that. Indian Fijian community from the rest of the data. And when you look at that data, they are well-to-do than the rest of the Pacific population. When you lump it all together, it does skewer things, and it hides the fact that in the rest of the Pacific population, the data does show inequities and a lot of barriers, whereas just purely the Fijian Indian population, that data shows that income levels, home ownership, business-wise, they are well off than the rest of the Pacific population. So that may be one reason why that separation is done, just so that the data is not skewed one way and hides the fact that many Pacific peoples are struggling to make ends meet, and particularly so under the current policy environment.
You're also calling for Fiji Hindi to be included in Fijian language weeks. Would you support that?
Look, that's not a question you should be asking me. I'm no longer the minister. That's a question that you should be asking Shane Reti.
But on a personal level, considering you are a Pacific leader and you speak for a lot of, of our communities.
In Aotearoa New Zealand, all Pacific peoples, irrespective of their ethnicity, and I've coined the phrase of 6 Bs, and I will always include them. But there is a different matter when it comes to Fijian because they are divided, and that's something that should be sorted out between Fiji themselves.
In the lead up to the budget being released, what do you think this impact, if any, will have on funding and the future of our population?
If you're a policy person, you'd be wanting to make sure that resources were going to a young, fast-growing population and prepare them for the future leadership of the nation. However, from the political rhetoric that I'm hearing and all the news items, the focus on tax cuts, I doubt very much that that's going to be the case. And when there is no Pacific representation in Parliament, it's hard to know whether ministers responsible for getting money out into the community would be listening to a Pacific voice whatsoever.
There's been a lot of discouragement, I guess, in the lead up to the budget because of so many job cuts in the public sector, particularly with the Ministry of Pacific Peoples. It's Samoa Language Week. I think a lot of people are, celebrating that and keeping their eyes on what is present, but there's this looming uncertainty. So what kind of hope is there for people in the midst of all of this? And what have you been saying to our communities across Aotearoa?
Well, I mean, I've heard directly from public servants who are quite nervous, and I've been teasing some of them. At least there's a number of people that their starting point was an increase of jobs in the public sector. But nonetheless, it's the same pattern that we've seen with the key government. They started off this way, and then later on, they realized that they needed bodies in the public sector to deliver the work. And so I expect that they'll soon learn that lesson. And I suspect there will be increase in contracts going out to the community, which on the one hand is a good thing, that money gets out into the hands of community organizations. But on the other hand, the job cuts at the moment is causing uncertainty, is causing a real sense of low morale within the public sector workforce. Because the government has focused so much on tax cuts, we really need to see how that impacts on lives of ordinary Pacific peoples. Is it going to be the way that the government is painting it, or are we just going to see a little bit at the bottom and more tax cuts for those at the top? And then I think we've got to see the impact of the cuts in the public sector and what that means. We probably need to talk to our communities to find out whether local services such as budgeting services in Māngere will continue, or whether those contracts have been cut, whether our church leaders who were given opportunities under the previous government to provide leadership around language and culture, whether they remain or whether those will be cut. At the moment, we've not been invited to any post-budget events or the lockup, so it's hard for us to really provide an assessment other than a feeling of suspicion and a feeling that history is repeating itself with this government.
Every 10 years, an international conference for small island developing states is held to assess the capabilities of these nations in achieving sustainable development. The last conference was held in 2014 in Samoa. This year, the fourth edition to the conference is in Antigua and Barbuda, where a 10-year action plan is being developed. Tiana Haxton spoke to some of the Pacific delegates at the conference.
There are over 50 states at the fourth Small Islands Developing States International Conference. UN SIDS Unit Chief Sai Navoti says the conference is an enduring partnership between nations, and he is impressed by the number of Pacific Island states in attendance. Pacific leaders are using the 2050 Blue Pacific strategy to guide discussions. Mr. Navoti says the strong involvement of Pacific Islands foreign members and regional agencies will ensure the outcomes from discussions will offer solutions to address major issues faced by the region.
I'm very happy indeed to see a large number of our Pacific Island leaders are represented here, and this will make this type of global declaration meaningful to our own people.
The Pacific Ocean Commissioner is advocating for improved ocean resource management at this conference. Dr. Philemon Manoni says there is much to be discovered in the ocean and proper management needs to be a priority.
I mean, at the end of the day, we are ocean people. The ocean is the sole breadbasket for all of us. It is the source of livelihood. It is the source of identity. And so economic development, it dawned on many of us about how little we know about what is there in the oceans.
He says the voices of young people also need to be heard in these discussions. A youth forum is being held on the sidelines of the Small Islands Developing States Conference in the Caribbean. Dr. Manoni says he has been impressed with the youth priority document.
So what that shows is that we are aligned in our thinking going forward as SIDS of how we could achieve our nation-building aspirations as we move forward. And the young people should be given a voice to be able to express their views because they are the future leaders.
Meanwhile, a Pacific business advocate wants to see more public-private partnerships outlined in the Prosperity and Development Plan. Howard Politini says Pacific nations need to work together.
We are speaking the language of reality. We cannot be isolated. We need to knock the walls down between government and private sector and realize that what we're doing for all the same people. It's our own people. We can talk through how we do this together.
The countries need to agree on their 10-year plan by Thursday.
That's Pacific Waves for today. To listen back, head over to rnz.co.nz/Pacific. We're also on Spotify, Apple and iHeartRadio. From myself and the RNZ Pacific team, so far, sui fua.